Joining us now is Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. Senator, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Senator, the FBI, DHS, and National Counterterrorism Center warned of potential copycat attacks after what we saw in New Orleans. There are several large-scale events coming up, from the Super Bowl in New Orleans to inauguration in D.C. Is enough being done to prevent something like this from happening again?
I can promise you everything is going to be done that they can imagine is going to be done. They don't want to look bad, first, and two, more importantly, they want to protect the American people. But we have to recognize wherever there's so-called soft targets, wherever there's a street festival in a big city, there's a potential for something bad to happen. So I would encourage the American people to be alert, to report things that look kind of like it shouldn't be that way, but to also live your life bravely. The thing that terrorists want to do is they want to terrorize us, which is to say, I'm too afraid to live in freedom. No, you got to be bold and live in freedom, and that's the best way we can counter terrorism.
Senator, the city of New Orleans spent $2.3 billion to harden infrastructure after the FBI warned in 2017 that the French Quarter was vulnerable to a mass casualty event. But the mayor said the steel bollards malfunctioned shortly after they were installed, and they were down for repairs ahead of the Super Bowl. They're being replaced. So when that attack happened, there were police vehicles acting as barricades. Listen.
It indeed have a plan, but the terrorist defeated it.
Well, the very next day, that police superintendent you just heard from admitted there were additional barriers on hand, but she didn't know they existed. 48 Archer barriers designed to stop a 5,500-pound truck going 60 miles an hour. The police superintendent didn't know what resources she had to protect the most vulnerable site in the city. Should she face consequences for that?
If everything as you laid out is as you said it, absolutely. There has to be leadership at the top. And if the leadership failed as you describe it, then absolutely there has to be consequences. Period. End of story. Now, I think we're going to have a kind of complete review of everything from top to bottom. And if that's the way it ends up shaking out completely, she should be replaced.
Yeah, police put out those Archer barriers the day after the attack to reopen Bourbon Street. Meridian Rapid Defense Group, the company that sold them to the city in 2017, said that they're the strongest mobile barriers in the world. But the CEO said, quote, not only did they not know they had them, they didn't even know how to describe them. And even now, in the pictures I've seen, the barriers aren't even set up properly because the wheels are still down. What's your reaction to hearing that?
Obviously, we're preparing now for a Super Bowl, and there's going to be a Mardi Gras before then. Very quickly, the city needs to implement everything it needs to do in order to take it to the next level. Now, I will say that our governor, Jeff Landry, has had the state police going down, and there's also a multi-parish, multi-regional task force, which is going to provide security. So I feel comfortable that when the Super Bowl comes, it'll be an incredibly secure environment. I went to the Sugar Bowl kind of as an act of defiance.
Should the state police take over the French Quarter?
I went to the Sugar Bowl, and you could not believe. I'm sorry. No, I don't think you have to take it over, but I do think that you need to have a plan which is credible, reviewed by outside entities, and they say, yes, this is good, and then you do everything you can to make sure that it's implemented correctly with a third party guaranteeing the implementation. And I think that's very doable.
President Biden will be visiting New Orleans tomorrow to meet with the victims' families. What are you asking for in terms of federal support?
Yeah, so first, my gosh, how can we not feel for both the families of those who died, but also those who've been injured and their families? And so in terms of federal support, I think, one, I've learned in medicine, as I'm a doctor, in medicine, when something bad happens, the family wants to know that it doesn't happen again, that the loss or the terrible thing that happened at least contributes to a greater good. The best thing that the city, the state, and the federal government can do is do their best us to make sure that this does not happen again. And what we can do as a people is to make sure that we don't live our lives in fear or in terror, but live our lives bravely and with liberty. And then support those families however they need support. By the way, I'm very proud of the medical teams in New Orleans. They're going to be providing first-rate care to all those victims. So we also have to take care of that which is immediate and practical.
Sir, the terror attack in your home state has renewed focus on the need for swift Senate confirmations, but delays, we're hearing, might slow that down. Republican sources told The Hill, quote, "You got to get the ethics paperwork and the FBI background check done, and that's taken longer than it should have. They should know better. This has a lot to do with the way the transition team has set itself to operate." Is this potentially a self-inflicted problem for the Trump administration?
I do know there was delay in getting the documentation signed in terms of allowing the sharing of data. Now, it's always easy to look back 2020 and say, oh, my gosh, things should have been different. I can't comment on the exact process, but I will emphasize that to get this done as quickly as possible, getting the right person in the right position clearly is important. And I would say that's not just for domestic issues, but also it's a dangerous world out there, also for the international environment.
Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing is next week. ABC's reporting that the Senate Armed Services Committee is requesting additional information from a veterans organization that he previously led, and also from the California DA who declined to bring charges following a 2017 sexual assault accusation. Are you aware of any delays that might bungle his confirmation timeline?
I'm not. But by the way, this is the due diligence. The Senate has in the Constitution an advise and consent process. And the fact that this is being requested isn't in of itself necessarily anything bad. It's something good in the sense that the Senate is supposed to look at the qualifications of the person who's nominated and then consent as if they agree that these are good people. So if the Senate's doing its job, that's a good thing.
You've already met with Hegseth. Are you a yes for him?
You know, I still have to see that process. One, we had a great interview. He presented the issues that that we all know about in the press, and he had a response for them. He was there with his wife. He explained how, you know, went after the war, after he served in the war, his life was messed up, and now it's better. I get that. But I'd also like to review the data, the information which is being requested. That is part of fully vetting someone. But Pete did a great job in his interview with me.
Your committee is going to be overseeing RFK Jr.'s hearing, and there are some reports that Democratic Senators John Fetterman, Bernie Sanders might be giving him a nod of support. How is RFK Jr. faring among Democrats on your committee?
I haven't spoken to him about it. I just don't know. I will meet with him this coming week. I look forward to the interview. I agree with him on some things and disagree on others. The food safety, I think the ultra-processed food is a problem. Vaccinations, he's wrong on. And so I just look forward to having a good dialogue with him on that.
Okay. And then yesterday, Speaker Mike Johnson made clear to House Republicans that it's Trump's preference to do one reconciliation package rather than two to get the 2017 tax cut extension done along with the border piece because of those narrow margins in the House. Are you on board with that approach?
Well, I better be. If the president says he wants it and Mike Johnson says he's going to do it, all spending bills originate out of the House. So I think that they will dictate the action. As regards to strategy, they're absolutely true. There's very narrow margins. And so we've got to get it right. I suppose that after they've looked at the votes they have in the House, they figured that is the best way to get it through. I'm not going to dispute Mike Johnson. I think he's doing a great job.
That is a little bit of a reversal. Usually it's the Senate that dictates what happens in the House.
No, you know, spending bills once more begin in the House. It's probably it's whatever chamber is having the greatest problems. And when Mike has a margin after three people leave for the cabinet of one, he's I don't know if there's ever been a House with that strict of a margin. Now, by the way, if we only do one reconciliation bill, those three people who are leaving to go to the cabinet will be replaced, and his margin will be at least a couple more, and not much, but a couple more. So there also may be something very practical in mind there, too.
It always comes down to the math. All right. Thank you, Senator Cassidy. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.